Good evening. I'm Sarah Moore-Peach, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Royal Opera House for tonight's Insight event. Welcome to everybody here in the Claw studio upstairs, and to everyone watching around the world on our live stream on the Royal Opera House's YouTube channel. Tonight's Insight event is getting us under the skin of a brand new production of what I think is one of Verdi's most thrilling scores, his opera Il Trovatore. We're going to be hearing from the director of the new production, David Bösch, and from conductor Gianandrea Noseda. Two of the cast join us as well, Marina Prudenskaya, who sings Azucena, and Željko Lučić, who sings the Count di Luna. And we're also going to be getting a bit of background to the opera from the University of Nottingham, Dr. Sarah Hibberd. And I'm also delighted to say that Marina has agreed to sing for us tonight. She'll be singing Azucena's thrilling Act 2 aria, Stride la Vampa, in which she describes the death of her mother. If anybody doesn't know the plot of Il Trovatore, I should say there are going to be quite a few plot spoilers tonight. But I've known the plot of Il Trovatore for about 20 years, and every time I see it, it is just as exciting. The drama, and indeed melodrama, of Verdi's score means that spoilers are really not an issue. This production opens on the 2nd of July, and it runs until the 17th of July, and there are still tickets available. You can book them online at roh.org.uk/trovatore. And then the production is going to be returning in November, running through until February, and you'll be able to see it in cinemas on the 31st of January. If you're watching on our YouTube live stream and you'd like to get in touch during the course of tonight's Insight event, then do tweet us using the hashtag ROH Trovatore. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming from the cast Željko Lučić and Marina Prudenskaya. Thank you both so much. I know you're really busy in rehearsals at the moment, so it's wonderful that you've joined us tonight.
We're two casts, so we...
Right, so this is the first question I wanted to ask you. This is really unusual that there are actually two complete casts who are rehearsing simultaneously and will then be performing on alternate nights, because the run is very, very compressed, and for one cast to do it every single night, one after the other, would be too much. But what is that experience like for you, being aware of a whole other cast of people doing exactly the same thing while you're rehearsing?
Ladies first. Yeah, so what I can say, I didn't see how the first cast rehearsing till now. So we rehearsed alone, and then another cast was rehearsing. So we will rehearse together, I think, from next week. So so it's nice.
Then we will see the old differences between two casts.
Right, so no competition or anything?
Yes, no.
Probably it will be another version, but I hope not.
So you two are in separate casts, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you're sharing tips at all about what's going on in the rehearsal process?
Well, actually, she's right. We didn't see each other at all. You know, we having rehearsals for us. You know, they have for themselves, and well, it's the same. We have to do the same things. It's the same opera, same words, same music. No changes.
We'll be hearing about the production later on from David Bösch, the director. But let's just talk a little bit about the opera itself and the plot. So for anybody who doesn't know what happens, can we just get introduced to your two characters? Marina, you are Azucena, who is the gypsy, and an incredibly powerful character.
Yes, it's the most powerful, maybe, and Verdi wanted to name the opera Azucena. I don't know why he changed his mind. Yeah, because tenor should be the first, of course, and the most important person.
And so it's named after Manrico, who is il trovatore, the
Yes.
troubadour, and
Yeah.
Azucena's son, but also not son, as we discover later.
Actually, the whole story is running around Azucena's mother's story, who was burned, and she was unguilty, and so her last words were just make revenge for me, and so Azucena is leaving. She exists, and she has this only thing in mind to make revenge for her mother, and so she actually it's written old gypsy in a character, but I think she's not old. She's maybe in her 30s, because gypsies got children very early, so maybe she got it with 16, and right. So so now she's maybe 35, and
Okay, let's move on from that brilliantly politically correct comment, and just focus back on the backstory of Azucena's mother, which we'll hear you describing in the aria Stride la Vampa, which you'll sing later. The person who effectively murdered Azucena's mother, burned her for supposedly putting a spell on his younger son, is your father.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So you are the new Count di Luna.
Yes, I'm one of two sons, actually. But at the beginning, of course, nobody knows that there's two sons at all. What is happening, that's her mother being completely confused what's going on, throwing in a fire her own child.
Right, so this is back 15
That's
years
the
ago
backstory,
or 20 years ago, that she effectively said, kill the second born of the Count di Luna in revenge, and Azucena threw a baby in the fire.
Manrico, of course.
But it was hers.
She abducted him, and she raised him as her own son. And there's a point one point in opera where she is actually telling him that she's not his mother. And then, but Manrico, of course, accepts her as her mother, etc., etc. But her, as she said already, her only mission is to revenge her mother, because those were the last words of the old gypsy.
And you're very generously telling the story of other characters, but I want to hear about yours. He's in love, isn't he, the Count?
Yes, actually, in a real love. There's nothing. I don't know how to say, nothing pervert or nothing strange in that.
He's in love with Leonora.
Leonora, actually, he is. Why am I telling she? I'm saying she every time. Never mind.
It's okay.
He is in love with Leonora, and of course he decided one night to come closer to her. And that's the point. That's in opera. It's called Terzetto, where actually he meets his brother, not knowing that yet.
Manrico,
for the first time. Yeah, he's knowing as trovatore. Yeah.
Now, your character is kind of as close to a bad guy as it gets in this opera, but he's a little more complex than that. So how do you understand him psychologically?
Well, actually, I cannot say that he's bad at all, because he has the most beautiful baritone aria of all time. No, really. I mean, this aria is so nice. It's so touching that, I mean, the way it's written and composed, it's really wonderful. But at that moment, he's expressing his deepest feelings and wishes and his love and everything. But from other side, yes, you may be right. He's also not bloodthirsty, but he's a count, and there's also very personal and political things as well, mixed between me and Manrico and two armies, etc., etc. So I cannot say that he's like a Macbeth or something, but, you know, close.
And what about Azucena? What happens for her throughout the course of the opera? What is her psychological journey? Because as you say, she's absolutely set on revenge.
Yeah, so she has the task, and so she has to, in the end of the opera, she dies as well because her strength, because she has done what she had to do, and so her life is over. So I think she dies in the end, and yeah, she tries to use Manrico, of course, to kill the brother, and she doesn't tell him that it's your brother, because then the story will change. We won't have this strange story, and I think that her mind is not clean, because if you throw to the fire your own child, the next thing you will do, you throw yourself probably, but she didn't do it. So she raised this child, the son, and all her melodies are very sad, and it's only minor in music what she has to sing. There is no sunny moments. Just the only one major thing what she's singing. It's Ai nostri monti in the fourth act with Manrico, where she remembers about good days that they had, and obviously.
What is it like for you returning to this role? Because you've sung it before in Berlin. Does it feel different to you second time round?
I think if you made the role once, then you can just support it more and more with another details in another production. But the character sits. You cannot make different character of what Verdi wrote, what he wanted, and because it's very clear what the character. She's desperate, ill, hurted, and she has to make this revenge, and also. Yeah, and it's all in music. You have just to listen to it, and then I will be like dive in this music because I feel it. So more you do it, more you like it. Verdi is very emotional, and all this palette of colors which Azucena has, it's deep and dark and strong, and also a bit ill in my mind, because she's talking the same things all the time.
Željko, you've sung the Count before as well.
Yes.
At the Met in 2010-11. So how is it for you returning to this role?
Well, actually, when I think about trovatore, it's always from that musical point of view. The rest I'm just leaving to David and other directors, because it's a very complex thing, a very complex piece of music and complex opera. It's very hard to direct, very hard to do anything, you know, because you have 8 pictures, 8 pieces, not connected at all between each other. And, you know, it's kind of pretty difficult to do anything. And, of course, demands... as one Enrico Caruso said, if you want a successful Il Trovatore, you will need the biggest 4 opera singers in the world, you know, because all these 4 roles are, you know, really extremely demanding.
And of course, this time around we need them twice.
Yes.
The 8 best.
Now we have 2 casts, you know, we have 8 best singers in the world. But. No, really, joke on the side.
So
we will, of course, give our best.
And you talk about being focused on the music. How is it vocally to sing? You mentioned your beautiful baritone aria.
Well,
but
that's
how does
exactly
it sit in the voice?
what I want to talk about, because this aria is the most difficult baritone aria ever written.
Sure.
Sorry?
Sure.
No, really, it is. So, I don't know. It's a big challenge, always. Always, no matter how long I sing trovatore, how long I stay on the stage. I'm 25 years already in this business, so it's always a big challenge, and you really have to be extremely careful and to know 100% what you're doing.
Careful with your voice.
Careful with voice, careful with everything, because maybe it's a mistake from some of singers or whatever to sing with a, let's say, full dark voice, or giving some colors where they not exist. Actually, it's extremely lyrical aria. Mm-hmm. It's lyric 100%. There is no one place where is written this little little letter F, which means forte. Nothing. It's dolcissimo, piano, etc., etc. So it's extremely demanding and challenging.
And the aria that you're talking about?
Yeah. Il balén del suo sorriso. The second act.
Yeah.
Aria.
We look forward to it.
Well, me too.
What about for you, Marina? How does it sit in the voice? I mean, it's one of the great mezzo roles.
Yeah.
It's kind of iconic.
I think that for Verdi voices, we can say Verdi voices, but you cannot start with Verdi when you are very young, because the voice should really be rough, developed, and you need to sing before Baroque or, I don't know, Mozart, all the stuff before you come to Verdi, even Wagner. I think that Verdi is more heavy as Wagner, because Wagner, this is specific of words, and in Verdi you just need voice, a lot of voice, and a lot of legato, and you need all your strength, because our orchestra is heavy. Of course, it's the majesty of maestro to put it balanced, that you will be heard. But it's a lot of middle tessitura. Yeah. It's a lot of also high notes, and it's slow, and a lot of middle, and a lot of high notes. So you need all your voice without any breaking of register, and you just have to work on it. and if you sing Verdi, you need time. You need time, and to work, to rehearse. Maybe if you start with Verdi, in 10 years, you can say, "Oh, now I can sing Verdi." So
it's one of the things about Verdi, though, that it's deceptively simple. When you listen to it, you think, that's easy, and it's really, really, really hard to do from the other
because
side.
it's very melodic.
Verdi,
it's melodic, and you think, this is just tra-la-la. It's like all songs. But in this papa, you have to push, not to push, but to give all you have, all what you learned in your career.
Yeah. Well, we're going to give you a chance to sing to some papa in a little bit, because you're going to sing Stride la Vampa for us. But now, please join me in thanking Željko and Marina for joining us this evening. Thank you very much. Well, still to come, we're going to be meeting Gianandrea Noseda and also hearing from the director, David Bösch. But first, for some background to Il Trovatore, please welcome Dr. Sarah Hibberd from the University of Nottingham.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Sarah. Well, Trovatore premiered in Rome in January 1853 and was an instant success, popular success. In fact, at the first performance, they were asked to sing to encore the entire final scene. So I don't know what, what Marina and the other singers would make of that if we asked them to do that again. It's the most popular of all of Verdi's operas during his lifetime. Nevertheless, despite this huge success, it continues to be in the repertory today, of course. Critics have always been a little bit suspicious about it, in part to do with the highly melodramatic plot. We were getting a sense of the complications, the extreme situations that the characters are in, the constant sense of heightened emotion, the bizarre coincidences. So that causes critics to be a little bit sniffy. And musically, we'll be hearing more about the music, but musically, in some ways, it harks back to earlier romantic opera in its use of closed musical forms. So it's an opera where there is a tension between popular and critical success. But in the theatre, all of that drops away. It has this extraordinary visceral impact, as we've been hearing. And I think critics find it difficult to explain that. So what I'd like to do in the next 15 minutes is to talk a little bit about the creation of the opera and some moments from its performance history to try and unpick some of that. Now, it's one of the three operas that Verdi wrote in the early 1850s that are seen as sort of cementing his reputation, at the heart of his repertory. And they really mark a sort of new stage in his career, a new stage in operatic history. After the 1848-49 revolutions that swept across Europe, including Italy, there was a clampdown on theatrical censorship. And as you know, these three operas, Rigoletto, Trovatore, Traviata, they're not about political stories, politics, war in the background, but they're about personal relationships. Verdi's operas from the 1840s tend to be stories about suffering peoples with big, inspiring choruses. In the 1850s, we turn to personal stories. And these three operas all deal with the tension between romantic love and family love. And Trovatore, of course, we certainly have that. It's also a moment where Verdi is beginning to slow down a little bit. He's been writing lots of operas, working incredibly hard. From the early 1850s, he's more financially secure, his reputation is cemented, and Trovatore is the first opera that isn't written for a commission. So, and through the 40s, 50s, his rate of composition slows down a little bit. He becomes a bit more picky about the librettos he writes and spends a little bit more time on the opera. So it's kind of an interesting moment in his career. Nevertheless, still incredibly busy professionally. So in the early 1850s, when he's working on Trovatore, he first of all decamps to Paris in the winter of 1851-52 with Giuseppe Strepponi, the singer with whom he's been living and who eventually marries. They have a great time in Paris. They go to the theatre. They see The Lady of the Camellias by Alexandre Dumas fils, and he's inspired by that and starts writing the music for Traviata. He secures the contract for Traviata. He also receives a commission from the Paris Opera for a new work, Vêpres Sicilienne, and he secures a contract for Trovatore, which he's been thinking about all year, and Rome, the Apollo Theatre in Rome, agrees to perform it in January 1853. So it's a busy time professionally. Now, where does he get the idea for the opera? Early in 1851, he's still working on Rigoletto, securing its first performance in Venice. He comes across the play, a Spanish play in Italian translation by Antonio García Gutiérrez called El Trovador. And it inspires him. He thinks, oh, this is strange, bit odd, bit bizarre. He sends it off to the poet Salvatore Cammarano to turn into a libretto. Now, Cammarano, I think we've encountered at previous Insight events. He was the premier librettist at this moment. He worked with Donizetti on Lucia di Lammermoor. He'd worked with Verdi before, most recently on Louisa Miller. And Verdi sent it off to him. Now, Cammarano has a reputation for being rather conservative, compared to Piave, for example, who wrote the librettos for Rigoletto and Traviata. But he had a real innate sense of theatre, was a really good craftsman, and was very good at converting kind of sprawling original texts into dramatically coherent librettos. And Gutiérrez's play is a huge, sprawling melodrama, and Cammarano manages to tame it, cuts lots of extraneous material, and we have 4 beautifully constructed acts. Characters are introduced gradually. Each act has its own particular dramatic conflict, and you have this sort of cumulative momentum as well through the opera. So he does a marvelous job. But this is what the critics didn't like about it. It is ridiculously melodramatic. The characters, we don't have much reflection, we don't have much psychological development of individual characters as we have in Traviata, for example. Instead, we have a series of sort of contrasting, juxtaposed moods. The characters are constantly in a height of sort of heightened emotion, driven, the main characters, by both love and vengeance, hatred, jealousy. So we have these extreme emotions. But Verdi thought there was something rather strange and interesting about the play that he really wanted Cammarano to retain in the libretto. He seems to be egging Cammarano on. We have this wonderful correspondence between the two of them from 1851 and 52, where he says to Cammarano, you don't need to write cavatinas, arias, duets, trios. We don't need an opening chorus. Whatever you give me, though, I can create music drama out of it. But Cammarano does present him with arias, duets, trios, and an opening chorus. And in some ways, it's quite a traditional, conventional libretto. But the tension between Verdi's excitement about the originality and this kind of fairly sort of conventional structure tames it. And in many ways, the power of the opera comes from this combination, I think. Now, key to this strangeness, of course, is the character of Azucena. Sorry, I've missed an image. Here we go, Azucena. Now, Marina says that she thinks of Azucena being about 30, and indeed the singer who sang the role of Azucena originally was in her early 30s. This is a sketch for the costumes from a Paris adaptation of the opera, and you can see the strangeness that Verdi was interested in. We've heard already, sort of dark, complex character, driven by vengeance, haunted by her mother. And it's the first of a series of mezzo-soprano roles that Verdi was to write. Ulrica in Ballon Masquera, another gypsy woman, but perhaps the more interestingly complex, vengeful Eboli in Don Carlos, or Amneris in Aida. And he liked the sounds, the texture, the timbre of the mezzo-soprano voice. He felt it really suited the character at the heart of the opera. Everything was going well then. Verdi had sort of got Cammarano to write him beautiful libretto. It wasn't quite finished. And then suddenly, in July 1852, Verdi read in the papers that Cammarano had died. And he's sort of horrified. The libretto was almost ready. Apparently, Cammarano had finished writing the big tenor aria, Di quella pira, 8 days before he died, but it wasn't quite finished. And Verdi managed to get Cammarano's pupil, Emanuele Bardare, to complete the libretto. And he also took this moment to expand the other female role, which we've heard less about so far, Leonora. And a very different character, very different kind of voice. So we have the sort of the drama, the complication, the difficulty around Azucena, and then Leonora, who has a much more lyrical role, the object of Manrico's and the Count's love, so still clearly embedded in the opera. And we have this sort of pole between these two female characters around which two sort of strands of plot work, joined together by the rivalry between Manrico and the Count. Now, let me just go back to the previous image we saw. This is an image that came with the sheet music for the aria that we heard about, the Count's aria we heard about earlier, the most difficult baritone aria in the whole repertory. And we have this rather marvelous image that captures the melodramatic quality of the story. This is at the end of Act 2, Leonora on her way to the convent. The Count decides to abduct her and sings this beautiful aria about how beautiful, how wonderful she is. And then, of course, Manrico arrives at the last minute and saves her. And you have this great image where she's sort of begging for pity, and the two men with their swords. This image could stand for the end of Act 1 as well. Rather amusing to think that Victorians thought they could sing the most difficult baritone aria of all time in their homes, playing the piano. But perhaps this image encouraged them to think they could take on the character. Now, the evening before the premiere of the opera, the Tiber flooded the sort of low-lying area of the city where the theatre, the Apollo Theatre, was. And in many ways, this sort of image of deluge can stand for the popularity of the opera and the way in which it flooded across the stages of Europe. Within a year, it had been performed at 30 different theatres across all 5 continents. Verdi famously said that whether you were in the Indies or in the interior of Africa, you would come across Trovatore. It was so popular. There were parodies made everywhere. Verdi was asked to adapt it for Paris, so he created a ballet scene. Every Parisian opera has a good ballet scene, and made a few changes to it. And in 1855, it premiered here at Covent Garden. And the tenor Enrico Tambelic was famous for singing the big tenor aria with the cabaletta Di quella pira, perhaps the most famous aria from the opera, apart from Stride la Vampa, of course. And he's been accused of adding high Cs to this aria that didn't have high Cs. We've also encountered the high C, I'm sure, in previous Insight events. Still a fairly new phenomenon, the idea that you could sing this high note with the full power of your chest voice. Apparently he tested his high C out in provincial theatres and thought he should add it to Di quella pira. He asked Verdi for permission, and Verdi said, yeah, if you can sing a good high C, that's fine. And so modern tenors are probably cursing Tambelic. Although modern tenors don't tend to sing the cabaletta twice, which is what happened in the 19th century. So you only have to get those high Cs once. We've heard about Caruso already, and his claim that you need the 4 greatest singers in the world to sing this, or in our case, 8 greatest singers in the world to sing this opera. He's quite an interesting character because here he is dressed as Manrico, and in many ways his rendition of Di quella pira has become quite famous. Now, ironically, he only sang the role in 1 season at the Met in 1908. But he was one of the first singers to really embrace the new sound technology that was emerging at the beginning of the 20th century. Many singers wanted nothing to do with it because the quality was so poor. But he became one of the first sort of singer celebrities, global celebrities. And one of his sort of signature arias was Di quella pira. Now, I began by saying there is this tension between the sort of popular appeal to us as audiences of Trovatore and the sort of critical hesitation because of the ridiculous plot and the rather old-fashioned structure. But I think give us all hope that it really doesn't matter if we don't understand the plot. I noticed, Sarah, you carefully didn't try and tell the plot. The singers avoided trying to tell the plot. It's so complicated. And yet, in the theatre, it all suddenly makes sense. It all comes together. The music articulates the drama. We have this fantastic momentum that builds through it. So I don't think we need to worry about the critics. And very much looking forward to seeing this production. Thank you very much.
Dr. Sarah Hibberd. Sarah, thank you so much. Absolutely fascinating. Well, please join me now in welcoming conductor Gianandrea Noseda.
How are you?
So, the plot is incredibly complicated of Trovatore. The music is also incredibly rich and deep. When did you first come to the score?
Quite late, 5 years ago, because I couldn't figure it out how it worked, all the plot of Trovatore. Because, you know, there is the mother, there is the daughter, there is the father count, there is the son count. You already are completely messed up by the end of the first act. And the second, you see everything continuing and developing, and you still are there, but who killed who? And what makes sense, and what is a miracle of this opera, Il Trovatore, is the fact when you attend a performance or you conduct, everything makes absolute sense.
As Sarah just said.
But at the end, how was the story? Yeah. Of course, I can tell precisely the story, but it's not the point of Trovatore.
So what is the point?
The point is the quality of the music. Of course, some of the critics has been mentioned. They were a little bit against the too melodramatic element of Trovatore. But in those years, let's say, already starting in 1847 with Macbeth, and continuing with Louisa Miller, 1849, and getting to the mid part of Hicks' production, Traviata, Rigoletto, Trovatore, Traviata, Verdi got the, let's say, the peak of his inspiration. I'm not saying the opera that followed this one, like Don Carlo, La Forza, Vep Sicilienne, Otello, Aida, Falstaff, Simon Boccanegra are not as good. But in this moment, especially in Trovatore, I have the impression Verdi had always carbon on fuel to put on the fire. You think, oh, this is so exciting. It cannot get even more excitement. And Verdi was able to add more excitement, more fire. And you think, oh, this fire is almost unbearable. He has still something to offer. So the temperature he gets artistically, emotionally, is so high. And that's why he is engaging, he's just keeping you on the edge of your seat. Also because all the opera is about fire, blood, and the darkness. Without these three elements, or one of these three elements, you don't have Trovatore. There is no one single scene on the daylight. Everything is in darkness, of course. How you can just not recognize your son or the one you want to burn, and you just burn it because it's dark. Yeah. Why when Leonora in the terzetto at the end of the first act comes out and just address her love to Conte di Luna thinking he is Manrico? Because it's dark, otherwise you cannot. I cannot go out and say, oh, my love, my darling. It's a completely different woman, also because my wife who is here will just be worried about. No? So darkness, blood, and fire. And in the music, you feel absolutely these three elements, from second one till the last note.
The other element, of course, is the kind of the mystical, in a way, the curse at the very beginning and the backstory, and this strange thing that Manrico says when he's had the opportunity to kill the count. But he says, something held me back. Some mysterious force stopped me from doing it. And of course, it's because he's his brother.
This is also very bizarre, because they had already a duel at the beginning. And of course, when Azucena tells him the story of her mom and the son with Condotta e le Rinceppi, the other aria, at a certain point, Manrico asks, non son tuo figlio, so I'm not your son. And Azucena says, oh, you know, I'm a little bit misled by what? Okay. And after that, there is the story. They just, the political side, so the Urgel and the Count, so the warriors, the military soldiers of the Count against the revolutionary, which are connected with Manrico, they already made a battle, were fighting together, and there is this moment where the Count is there, he is on the point to kill him, I couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. Doesn't make sense, but there, with the music, you think, oh, some angel or some god just retain his hand. And the same is with the nuns, and there are other elements.
So this is the real question that I have about this piece, because we heard earlier on the singers describing this papa that we have all the way through. And some critics say, you know, this is almost looking back to a kind of bel canto of before. But how does Verdi do that in the orchestration and in the vocal writing? How does he do it that he makes you feel like there is something else driving the show, that there is this kind of, you know, mysterious force working, and that darkness and that melodrama?
I think it's the same story when you go in a rock concert in the big stadium, and most of the critics, they say, oh, but the music is so simple. Yeah, but you go there, and there is such a big amount of energy, and you cannot resist. With Verdi, it's the same. Some critics, they say, oh, yum papa, but with that element from Libia, Moli Unzazza, or yum pampa stride la. So there is always this element, but also we don't have to forget that sometimes our beat, heartbeat, is not tum, it's tum, tum, tum. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that this element, by the way, this fact you mentioned about the zum papa, papa, in all the opera, Azucena music is written in 3. 1, 2, 3. Stride la vampa, Condotta alle Rinceppi in 6. In 3 is la stanchezza m'opprime figlio. And also the only moment where she sings in a major key, ai nostri monti ritorneremo. And 3 also means God. But there is nothing more far from God than Azucena. So also the idea of Verdi, the sickness of Azucena, her idea to revenge her mother is so strong that it becomes almost a mystical mission. And that's why it's a sort of goddess from the bad side. And all the music has this trilogy, 3 elements of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And I think also what is important in Azucena is not only the 1, 2, 3, bamba. Always she has also this kind of rhythm. Ta-ta, ta-ta. Stride la pa a pa. Ta ta ti ta ta.
It's that very quick dotted rhythm.
La stanchezza m'opprime fi. Just to show us there is not a plain bel canto. That's why sometimes the critics, they say, oh, they're still looking back to the bel canto. There is nothing more far from bel canto than trovatore. The only moment of bel canto, that's why it's so terribly difficult in an opera, no bel canto, is il balen, the aria of the baritone, because he is using the Verdian dramatic baritone. At a certain point, he has to sing with this pianissimo, dolcissimo, legato, cantilena, espressivo, emotionally full, but just whispering, sottovoce. That's why, because you are singing all the opera, pa, 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 pa. After that, you have just to float, to be suspended. So the un papa in Verdi has also a dramatic reason.
So what for you is the greatest challenge of this opera, conducting it?
Oh, is like any opera, to be able to tell the story through the music. It seems the easiest thing is the most complicated. Just to be able to tell the story using the words by Cammarano, the music by Verdi, the acting of the singers, the voice of the singers, the cooperation with the director, and just try to tell the story in the most believable way. Opera is not just telling a story that not touch us. When someone kills another guy, in the opera we see like sort of detached by us. But actually it's happening even today. Even today, in Italy, I don't know, in UK, we have one day yes, the second day yes, as well. The one husband killing the wife. It is incredible in the last 3 weeks. So people is able to kill for love or for jealousy. Opera is telling us the story we are living now. The differences between right, left, different religions is there. Count di Luna, Manrico. They cannot cope. And the most intriguing thing is, by the end, the last word is egli era tuo fratello.
Brothers.
They were brothers. And they didn't know each other. That is also very, very intriguing, just to approach Trovatore not like a beautiful story and just to enjoy.
Well, I mean,
He's telling us there is nothing pleasant.
There's nothing beautiful about the story of babies being thrown on the fire and people poisoning themselves. I mean, it's properly horrible if you really take into account what's actually happening.
And to rape one nun, just Leonora decides to become nun, and once I go there, I rape her.
Yeah. No, it's utterly horrible. But I'm curious, when you talk about telling the story through the music and that being your challenge, what you described about it having this relentlessness to it, how do you pace that throughout the whole opera? Because it starts and it's like the inevitability of everything coming horribly crashing down, a curse being avenged, all of that, it's inevitable somehow.
The most difficult thing is try not to be ashamed.
How do you mean?
I mean, you don't have to be afraid to be emotionally naked when you conduct. You have to trust Verdi. If Verdi put something unbearable, horrible, he wrote it, go for it. Anyway, it's his responsibility. We have just to say, what is terrible, or what I find a little bit bizarre? If you try to make some music very strong, a little bit polite, to be more acceptable, and you don't serve the music becomes not boring, but just okay. How was it? Okay. It's not okay. It's just incredible, the drama and the relationship between Sarah was fantastic. In Rigoletto, Trovatore e Traviata, Rigoletto, Trovatore e Traviata in the order. Yeah. The relationship between, of course, Rigoletto is father and daughter. In Traviata is father and son.
And also surrogate daughter in a sense.
In a way. Yeah. And here is mother with not even the son. But the son calls Azucena. Manrico always calls Azucena mother. Why don't you sleep? The most tender music from a son addressed to the mother, which is not even the mother, but he doesn't know, is sung by Manrico in the fourth act. Yeah. It's incredible.
And he tries to reassure her.
Just calm down. Yeah. We will go back. He knows he's lying. He knows. But of course, with your mother, which is suffering, you try to make her life easier, sweeter.
A very practical question then about rehearsing with a double cast and performing with a double cast. How is that working for you?
I should have, let's say, an idea how to go through the opera. And of course, you have also to rely on the instruments you have and the human body and the personalities and what they think about the music. Not to find a compromise. Compromise is always negative. Compromise is no fish, no meat. It's just... You have to go in one direction, but respecting what also the artist has to offer to you, and try to find some of the to Azucena, to Leonora has more easy top. The other one has a fantastic, luxurious mid-register. Of course, they try to use and to show the best part of what they have. And you have to help. If you go against the singer. You go against yourself because it's not going to work, against the audience they will not like, against Verdi. So at the end you will be a failure. So I will just... But also one thing about the challenge, I will just stop talking, is also the fact Verdi was very urgent man in terms of the way he lived. He always had 3 or 4 things at the same time to go, to take care, Yeah, the wife, the mistress, and the 3 operas, and 1 contract there was not paid there. He wanted to create an hospital. At the end of his life, he was obsessed just to create the hospice, or just the house for the retired musician. So it was like a volcano of ideas, no? And even in the way he writes opera, you see that. There is not time to lose. Yeah. He doesn't want to waste time. And usually the tempo, the metronomic marks are so quick. I'm considered a quick conductor. I mean, but I cannot respect the metronomic marks of Verdi. So the idea of Verdi is even faster, but it's not anxiety, it's urgency. Anxiety is something negative, I find. Yeah. Urgent is, I have to do that, that leads me this, that leads me. It's a different, also the ability to tell the story, like my grandma. God have her in peace. But I was 3 years old. Apparently, my mom was telling me it was not possible to keep you calm for 2 seconds. And my grandmother could tell me stories for half an hour. It was just like that, because she had the timing. Just, and the count, pausa. And Verdi, as a composer, is absolutely the same. Sometimes he creates these suspensions. After that, when you expect something caressing you, it pushes you like that. Can be angry, can be, let's say, arrogant to the audience, but he likes this kind of big differences. So, why not to do this?
We're about to hear an example of one of Verdi's great dramatic moments. Yep. Marina Prudenskaya is going to sing Strida la Vampa for us. Just very, very quickly, tell us what exactly is happening for Azucena at this moment. What is she telling us?
Strida la Vampa is the area where she tells the story to Manrico how her mother, gypsy as well, was burned in a fire. Simply, was taken because was accused to take the son of the other son of the Count of Luna father, and the name is not Manrico, it's García, but no one knows it because in the first aria Ferrando racconta la storia di García. And
no, stop! It was so clear before. Now you're getting us confused.
We don't go there.
Gianandrea, thank you so much.
But here he's telling the story. When the Count just discovered that this gypsy had decided, and the obsession of Azucena is always referred to this music. This music comes 3 times in the opera. Once is in the aria, and the other 2 times is just showing us the obsession. There is the flute. Tin, 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 ta, ta, ti, ta, ta. And she refers to that. And those 3 moments tells us how mad she becomes when this music sounds in her head.
Gianandrea Noseda, thank you very much. Please join me in welcoming Marina Prudenskaya to the stage. thank you so much to Marina Prudenskaya and to pianist Philip Boldman for that wonderful performance of Azucena's aria, Stride la Vampa, and thank you also to Gianandrea Noseda. Now, please welcome director David Bösch. Now, before we start, I have to let you know that somebody is watching this YouTube live stream. She's called Marta, and she says, I live in Zaragoza in Spain, where the town of the Trovatore is located. Where have you located your production? Where does it take place?
Oh, at first when you said there's someone watching on YouTube, I thought my mother or my father.
Relax.
But they don't have so good internet. They live in a very little village. Yeah. Yeah, that's always a good question. Where do you locate such a story? It always leads to the question: is it a traditional? Is it a modern production or so? Do you try to stick to the rules of the opera? And I think you have to try. Or you have to do it, like Mr. Noseda said, but it's always, I think, is a big task to find a setting, or I would like to say to find an atmosphere where the emotions, the melodramatic story, and where the characters can come to life. And I never think about, okay, it takes place maybe in the 50s, so it has to look like this, like this, like this. I think you always have to create a little bit a kind of a world for a piece, for a play and for an opera. And I like melodrama, not in my life, but on stage. I like poetic. I would love to be a poet. But I'm just a director, and but so we try to get these three words into this world, which were said before and which sound like an episode of Game of Thrones or an album by Metallica or so. Blood, fire and darkness, yes, or darkness, blood and fire sounds better. And I think you have to create a world where this can happen, and where all what the music tells is also not visible, but you can feel it in the stage and in the world. There is a special task in this opera. It was already mentioned that it's there were like 8 images or 8 pictures, like 8 scenes, and they have not so much to do with each other. There is sometimes a lot of time between the scenes, and so you have to find, of course, a solution where you can very fast and easily go to another set or another atmosphere. But it has to be fast, because I don't want to, that the audience has to wait, because it has this energy and this pressure and this tempo what we need, I think.
So how have you found a solution to that? Managing to move between these rather different and sometimes kind of disjointed scenes, but still maintain that atmosphere of darkness and fire and blood?
Yes, it's... Maybe first we thought that there are like very different worlds in a way. There is what Mr. Lučić told about. There's Luna, and he's a real lover, and you saw him. He's a real man, and he sings really one of the most beautiful arias in this piece, and he also. He very early he lost his father. What we get to know about the backstory. His son was, like we know, was taken away, and so he was, in a way, he was alone. And very far from the beginning of his life, he had to become the new Conte. He had to take a big responsibility for everything. He's a soldier. He's a leader. So there's not much place in his normal life for love. And so this is the one world, a world which is cold, which is which has stick to some rules. And the other world is the world of the troubadour. That is a world of poetry in a way. It's a world of gypsies. Of course, they don't have a home. They are always on the run. Sometimes they have to run away, so it's a very hard life. But also they are free in a way. They find the positive aspects of this lifestyle. And so we see already that we have two very different worlds, and Leonore is attracted by the world of the troubadour, as we can understand. If someone is coming every night in your garden and singing in a wonderful melody to your balcony, I would even fall in love to everybody then. And yes, so we try to get like two very different worlds in a way.
And how are they represented visually, those different worlds? Is there kind of, fire and
yes,
cold?
There is like, the idea for the gypsies was what I said, in a way they are homeless. What has two meanings. This has a meaning of homeless, of having no home, but also going wherever you have to go or wherever you want to go. So we tried for them, and that is also good for a very quick stage change, that everything what they have is like on wheels. So they can immediately leave, and immediately they can come. And for the soldier world, it's kind of we looked for a symbol like for power, and so we thought of a tank. The first question was, will it be a German tank or? But it's not a German tank. It's kind of, and it doesn't mean that it takes place in this time or this time. It's just more. It's a symbol, and I think it works quite well. Of course, the only thing is a lot of men which are in the production said, "Oh, the exit of the tank is on the wrong side." So you see, it's a very unique tank, and it can only...
Details. I think we might have a photograph of it, actually. Shall we have a look at some of the images that we've got from... Yes. So tell us what this is here that we're seeing. Yes,
that is the first curtain. We already see that it's a complicated story, because we can't see anything. And we see when two people are in love, it's always easy. When there are three, there begins jealousy and violence, and so it's a little bit, it's just a front curtain, and to get a little bit like the archaic power of the story, because I also think it's always of course you can say it's a stupid story or it's not believable, but like in every good story from the Greek stories, it's about emotions, and it's and that can be so strong. And I think we have these emotions, I think, I hope, but we can't express them in our normal life. So it's good to have art, opera, theater, literature, poetry.
And there's the tank.
Yes, we see the tank. And we see these little guys, you see there's something what is similar in both worlds. Also the soldiers are without home, because, of course, as soldier, I can only imagine, I didn't have to go to the army. You are far away from home, you are far away from your family, you're far away from your love. So it's also a little bit an empty and lonely life. And in the first scene, there is Ferrando who tells a story, and it's a very melodramatic story of the backstory, what we heard already. And it's also like when you hear a story, you like maybe the grandmother of Mr. Noseda, then it's the same. Everybody's attracted to the story, and you feel for a moment, you feel in an own world, and maybe you can forget the real world. And of course, theater and opera and everything has to deal with the real world, but maybe not so much about the society, more about the humanity, or what is taking place in humans, because that is kind of not changing so much. Yeah.
Let's have a look at some of the other model box pictures. So this is, you know, clearly bleak and cold.
That's the garden. Yeah, it looks. There are more flowers on the.
Yeah, this is only a model box. This is not a photograph of the set.
But go back, please, one time. Yeah, what you see is that's the first thing you have in the first image. You have like the tank and everybody sitting around, and there's a story. And here's the dark, romantic garden in a way. It's already not a garden full of flowers. It's already burned a little bit. The trees look a little bit burned. So it's always, we tried in nearly every image to create something with fire and people around the fire. So you always see the different aspects. Fire, like when I see a fire, I always, get a little bit silent in a way and feel comfortable. If you have a woman beside you, maybe it can be also very. And so, but it's also the destruction part of fire. It's so, but you're attracted to it, like you when you have a candle, you play with it. You have to test it, and so.
And in this, what we're seeing here, you know, the fire is in the oil drum, and it is a real kind of drawing in. Somebody tells a story around a fire.
Yeah.
So we're seeing those kind of, as you're saying, those two sides to fire. One is destructive, the other is actually kind of, you know, homely and narrative. Let's have a look at the next slide, if there's one more.
Yes, that's a part where Leonora, she heard about the death of Manrico. She thinks he's dead, and so her only solution is, she's also a very extreme character to go to
nunnery,
to become a nun. So we see she's a really strong character. She really says, I want to go for everything. I want to do everything for love. When I have to die, then I will die. So she's kind of maybe she read too much Romeo and Juliet. We don't know.
And let's have a look at the final one.
Yes, now we have a big split because we want to have suspense so that you don't see everything. So that's already near the end. So we see in the end there will be like a big fire, a big Scheiterhaufen, like where you throw people to be burned.
Funeral pyre.
Yes, it's and it's also should be always be realistic, but also not realistic. But I think this idea of fire, it's just in Azucena's mind all the way, and she can. Yeah, like we heard, never forget it. Yeah, and
the double cast. I've asked everyone else about this. I'm going to ask you too. How is that affecting you, having to rehearse two casts at the same time?
Yes, the most is already been said. I think that everybody looks different when you talk about the character, when you talk about, okay, I think in this moment maybe you become very sad, and so of course everybody looks different when he's sad. You can see it when there was a Champions League final. I did some photos of the television of the fans of the Madrid fans who lost, and everybody. So it was like you have given them the direction notice. Okay, you're very sad because your football club have lost, and everybody had so different expressions of the same feeling, and of course that is a nice part about being a director and having a double cast, that you have more work because that's what we heard before, that I didn't want that they see each other doing it, because I think it's not about they are great artists, they are great singers, but they are artists, and so it's not about, okay, yes, no, your colleague did it like this, so please could you please do it like this. So I think the scenes are the same, the staging is sometimes a little bit different, sometimes things work with the one cast, with the other cast they don't work, and so you have to find different solutions, and it's a very, very interesting, challenging job, and we always want to give a very good show for the audience, but I think everybody also always wants to learn in a rehearsal process. So you listen to each other, and so I have more people to listen. So I will be a much better director and a much better human being after this production.
How much is your opera directing informed by your work in theatre?
It's like 50-50. I started as theatre director, did a lot of Shakespeare and modern plays, and in 2009 I did my first opera in Munich, Elisir d'Amore, and before I did it I was really, should I do it, because such a masterpiece and on such a big house already. Maybe I should make a very small opera first to get to know and blah blah. And I talked to this with a very famous old director who's like a mentor to me. He has a beard and he smokes a lot of cigarettes, so he's a real director. And he said, yeah, I think you shouldn't do it. And I said, okay, I don't have to do it. Very good. And he said, no, because when you start to do it, you will always do it again. Then it will be very hard going back just to theater, because you have the music, you have this very different world, you have this international world where you meet so many interesting people which know so much about different things. And so if you do it, you have to take care that you still stay in theatre director as well, and for me it's very interesting because actors are much more divas than opera singers.
Really?
Yes, really.
Huh.
It's really
Why do you think that is?
I think it's a little bit. I always think opera is both. It's for singers, it's art and it's also sport. And they have, of course, they know how to sing the role. They can sing it, and when they are on Royal Opera House, they know that they sing it on a very extreme high level, and so they are not so dependent on the director. If you have an actor and he hears, okay, you play Hamlet. In Germany, he starts to get a nervous breakdown and he knows nothing when he gets to the rehearsal because you have to you have a translation, you don't know who your partners are, you don't know in German theater if to be or not to be, should it be emotional, should it be like just natural, should it be expressive, there are so many things you don't know as an actor, so you're really dependent on so many things, so you have much more fear, I think, and also in a way much more fear to show your emotions. It's like really what Mr. Noseda said, you doesn't have to be ashamed, you have to go for it. And with an opera, with some actors, it's in German theater it's sometimes very difficult because it's sometimes too intellectual for my mind, for my opinion. And so you have a lot to discuss, and when you say, okay, and now it's just this emotion, and you have to open your shirt, and then, no, but why do I have to open my shirt? And with an opera thing, it's very easy. Yeah, go to the knees, and of course, he's already on the knees.
Well, I, for one, cannot wait for this production of Trovatore. David Bösch, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, tickets are still available for this Royal Opera House production of Il Trovatore for performances from the 2nd until the 17th of July. You can book online, roh.org.uk/Trovatore. Join us for a BP big screen on the 14th of July. And if you can't make it for any reason this season, it's returning at the end of the year, December through until next February, and it will be live in cinemas on the 31st of January. And if you've enjoyed tonight's event, then you can go online to find out more about the Royal Opera House's Insights programme and book tickets. That's roh.org.uk/insights. Huge thank you to all of my guests for joining me tonight, to the audience here in the Claw studio upstairs, and to everyone watching on our YouTube channel worldwide. Good night.